My Every Faction's biggest flaw video was the most fun I've ever had making a video, and you guys loved it, except for the 7% of you who didn't. And that's fine, I get it, it's not nice to have negative opinions directed towards your faction, but as YouTube is my entire life, every moment of happiness is a direct correlation to my analytics, so I need to bump that shit up right now before I crash out and start writing a manifesto. So in this video, I'll be pandering towards your favourite army so hard you'll be begging me to stop with the racist Chinese accent, but I won't, so sit down, take the green pill, and subscribe to my channel as we go over the best thing about every faction in the game. The armies of Warhammer are rather derivative in design. You know, like how the Tyranids are kind of just the aliens from Starship Trooper, and that Necrons kind of used to just be Terminators, and a lot of armies are just Tolkien races but in space, and sometimes Cockney. I just bring this up to contrast how unbelievably fresh the Genestealer cult lore is. A dormant cult that lays in wait for generations, sowing subtle seeds of chaos in preparation for a Tyranid invasion. That idea is so fucking cool that sometimes I feel like it doesn't even belong in the entirely unsubtle world of 40k. Like seriously, that is one of the coolest and most unique ideas for an antagonist I've ever heard. Honorable mention thing I love about the Genestealer cult, they're just the weirdo army. They're the Dan Hibiki or River Shen of 40k. Not because they're overly silly, but because they always seem to be doing some weird shit in game. Last time I played against a Genestealer cult player, it was a couple editions ago now, but I let him set up his army while I took a Waz, and when I came back, he had set up an actual full army of pogs on the field. Literally not a single model on the board. I love that army. And mining weapons are just so sick. Honestly, this is one of the coolest armies in the game. I find sub-armies to be so much cooler in theory than they are in practice. Like, I know a guy who's obsessed with the Death Company, and whilst my absolute favourite thing in Warhammer is when someone goes all in on their favourite niche army, every time I see his full Death Company army, I can't help but think, damn, that really is just black Space Marines. Orcs, however, absolutely aced the idea of sub-factions. In my last 3 games against Orcs, I played against rusty-ass Imperial Knights, a tide of 120 Orc boys, and then actual Mad Max Fury Road. Each one was so much fun, and I felt like I was playing against something completely different. This is kind of just the advantage of having one of the biggest model ranges in the game. But I don't know, Eldar have a similarly huge line, and outside of the occasional Wraith army, you don't see the same kind of variety. There are so many armies in the game right now that really struggle with tiny army syndrome. The issue of, man, I would love to play X army, but I just wish they had a couple more kits to play with. And whilst this is undoubtedly an issue for the Votann, it's actually insane how complete of an army this is with such a small selection. There is genuinely only 13 datasheets in this entire army, but each one is so solid that you forget this army has only had one wave of releases. Votann have a nice selection of vehicles, an amazing variety of elite infantry, and a great cast of characters, all completed by the perfect middle ground battle line. Other than the terrible balancing on their initial release, this is one of Games Workshop's biggest recent victories. This point is all but nullified by 10th edition, but historically, I think Tau had by far one of the best list building experiences in the game. As someone who enjoys buying models and building lists more than I like painting models and playing with them, I spend a lot of time cooking up different lists, and it goes without saying that the coolest part of Tau is the battlesuits. I've genuinely never seen anyone play Tau without just spamming battlesuits, but for me, even more than just looking badass, I love that you get to customize the weapon loadouts on each of the battlesuits. It was just so cool and something most armies didn't get to experience. Sure, you get to put a plasma pistol on some of your squads, but that's just not the same as picking all 4 weapons on an awesome battlesuit. And you used to choose which drones you got to put with them. That was so cool. I've not built a Tau list in 10th edition to be fair, but I can't imagine it hits the same as it used to. And no, this isn't my answer because I keep getting flamed for glazing crew. I don't even know what glazing means. In the evil version of this video, I complained about the many iterations of Reanimation Protocol. But there is a reason that rule's been around longer than I've been around. The idea of bringing back your immortal warriors turn after turn, evil fucking necromancer style is just so cool. I also enjoy the tiny little check like it each time I remember this faction's defining ability was once just a cheap ripoff of the Terminator. Funny how far we've come. Also, I know everyone seems to be fed up with Catan shards these days since they seem to be perpetually competitive datasheets, but enslaved star gods are just so cool. Games Workshop has really been digging transport armies recently. In fact, of the 5 most recent codexes as of rating this, 4 of them have dedicated transport detachments. I guess the Games Workshop kind of wrote themselves into a bit of a corner when they promised each army would have 6 or 7 distinct ways of playing them, complete with their own unique stratagems and enhancements, and transport armies are probably just an easy one to throw together. But Dark Eldar are by far the coolest transport army. Seeing a fleet of boats rush up the board is just so cool. Probably the only army in the entire game where the standout fan favorite unit is their dedicated transport. I love the boats so much. I think a universal experience as a kid was having that one super powerful video game character to latch onto. The kind of uber powerful badass that would shape your understanding of what it meant to be cool. For many kids that was Master Chief, or Charizard, or Doomguy. But for me, it was the Warlock from Dawn of War 3's Last Stand mode. I spent hundreds of hours playing Last Stand in Dawn of War, which is weird because I barely touched the actual game. I mostly played the mech boy and I was super bad at it, and I would just spam random games trying to get someone to carry me. Whenever I would get my ass carried, it was always by someone playing the Warlock. That motherfucker was invincible, like the tankiest character in the game by far, and it was just so cool to see the sword-wielding sorcerer shrug off every attack and blast people back with Psychic. I really miss Dawn of War's Last Stand mode. People always preach the diversity of Space Marines, and whilst there's absolutely a shitload of Space Marine units, they're all kind of the same. You could narrow down like 100 datasheets to your choice of box tank, infantry, or dreadnought. If you want to see what real diverse model lines look like, I'd point you towards Tyranids. Fundamentally, they're all alien monsters, sure, but that's what Tyranids are. If we break it down just by the Monster Mash lists alone, each one of these chunky models are so cool and really stand out from each other. The Bivor is probably my personal favourite, but I do adore the new Norn models. Honestly, as someone that's really into kaijus, this is one of the best model lines in the game. I totally see why this is one of the most popular armies in the game. I also love that when people approach this army, most people will have to choose for themselves if they want to go Monster Mash or Unending Swarm, and it always says a lot about a player by which one they choose. I personally flip-flop a lot between which one I prefer. I think I just prefer Monster Mash a bit more, but Swarms are super cool as well. We're now 9 armies in, and I finally have something meaningful to say about gameplay. I love the toolbox style of game plan you can do with Chaos Demons. The idea of keeping half your army in reserve and deep striking down the perfect unit for whatever problem you need to solve is not only ridiculously cool, but it's also something truly unique to demons. Like sure, Tau has a range of damage profiles that will shred anything you need, but it's the demon's ability to drop these tool pieces down anywhere on the map and pick them up again to use later that's just so cool. I actually have a large demon army that I've never played before. I've just been picking up good deals on demons on the off chance that summoning comes back to the game. And that does make me extra sad that demons probably won't be around next edition. I think Orc players hog the spotlight for creative kit bashers, when Chaos Knight players have been pumping out some of the most creative masterpieces I've ever seen. I think this mostly stems from Chaos Knights not actually having their own models for most of their existence, which is insane to look back on. But I seriously think Chaos Knight players have the best kit bashers out there. I even have my own kit bashed Word Bearer's Armiger. I don't even play Chaos Knights. In fact, I don't even know how I got this, it just appeared in my collection 5 years ago. The Emperor's Children are a top 2 army for me, and as such, they get 2 answers. Firstly, Fulgrim's the coolest Primarch, and it's not even really close. One of the many sub-themes of the Primarch is a bit of an exploration of masculinity, and where that falls flat for me is that most of the Primarchs are the exact same Gears of War style of hulking physique. And whilst there's a lot more to masculinity than physical might, I really like that Fulgrim shows a more elegant yet still beefy masculinity that's really hard to come by in these sort of settings. I've seen so much discussion of the many physical feats of the Primarchs, and I always see mention of the time Angron held up the step of a Warlord Titan, or the time Leman Russ broke the bones of pretty much every Primarch. Rarely do I see mention of the time Fulgrim tore a torture device out of his own anus and simply responded, "Pity, I was starting to enjoy that." That's real lore, look it up. Secondly, in my flaws video when it came to the Emperor's Children, I said I kind of wish the Emperor's Children wore high heels, and I caught a lot of flack for that. A lot of people really hate it when the Emperor's Children are called gay, and I actually kind of agree. To call anything gay is to oversimplify something which is core to the being of many people. But at the same time, if you're that worried that people think your pink Space Marines are gay, this army just isn't for you. This hobby isn't for you. You need a job or something. So when I got my hands on all the Emperor's Children models and discovered that almost all of the non-battle line actually did have high heels, something that's quite hard to spot on all the front-facing box art, I have never felt more vindicated in my entire life. Okay, here's a really recent one. I'm not the biggest World Eaters fan, truthfully. I'm just not a big red guy. But within the brand new codex, which isn't even out yet as of writing this, lies what I consider the single best detachment ever written. Khorne Demonkin. Never has a single detachment made me want to play an army so badly. It's just the standard Demon Soup detachment. They did not need to go this hard, but man, the Blood Tide system is outrageously cool. I've actually seen this army rule criticized more than I've seen it praised. People saying that the random nature of getting Blood Tide points is just bad games design. God forbid Chaos Space Marines have a bit of chaotic games design. Just after summoning demons, my biggest issue with Chaos Space Marines has always been that they just don't feel chaotic. Chaos in 40k to me, as someone that engages with the hobby side of things and not so much the lore, has always just meant spiky and evil. I'm a huge fan of how Chaos is represented in Magic the Gathering, and to me, the Khorne Demonkin detachment finally brings that to Chaos. Also, you can summon Bloodletters. I might actually have to play this army. Also, shout out the Scintillating Legion for actually making Chaos feel chaotic. Easily my favorite detachment before this one dropped. My favorite army in the lore is Emperor's Children. My favorite model line would have to be the new crew, and my favorite army to play is Imperial Knights. But if I had to pin down who my favorite character in all of 40k is, I think it would have to be Ahriman. I've not read any of the books, and I've only known what's been told to me in passing. Everything I hear about him is so damn compelling. It is such a shame that Warhammer is starting its cinematic age so late, because I think Ahriman is the perfect character to adapt into a series of movies. The ultimate sorcerer who decimated his brothers, made champion by his god just to toy with him, it's just so cool. Also, I'm gonna go ahead and say it, you can cancel me, I don't care. I like the Tzaangors. I think the Tzaangors are really cool. You can cancel me for that. Nurglings are just the best, that's really it. I'm a sucker for stupid tiny henchmen, and whilst I know Nurglings is a demon unit, I actually prefer them as little decorations and base pieces on Death Guard models. I know it'd be corny and lose all of its charm, but I wish each of the Chaos Gods had their own Nurglings equivalent, or at least Slaanesh had one so I could decorate my models with them. I think in that sense, Nurgle players are probably the luckiest of the Monogod enjoyers. Also, from my experience, Death Guard has by far the nicest community, but I've been told to stop putting anecdotes in these videos, so fuck you guys, I guess. This one was weirdly so hard to come up with an answer for. I love Chaos Space Marines, but their identity is a little amorphous in game due to try to fit in the playstyle of 8 major chapters into one rule set. They kind of are just spiky Space Marines at the end of the day. Chaos Space Marines do have some of my favorite ongoing lore at the moment. I'm so excited to see what comes of Vashtor. The idea of a new player in the setting attempting to climb to godhood should come across as a bit forced and trying too hard, but I think Vashtor is just so compelling of a character it kind of works, even for a stagnant setting like 40k. Once upon a time I would have said that Chaos Space Marines had the best Forge World options. I loved the drill and drop pod so much, and I would have done anything to see the Scorpion on the tabletop. But unfortunately, those models are no more. Now I think about it, I left out almost all of the Codex Space Marines, so Deathwatch was a really weird inclusion last time around. Regardless, I always loved the idea of their ammo type gimmick, even if it wasn't always designed that well. And even though I gave kill teams flack for being a bit confusing, they were really cool. I'm also going to rapid fire off the Codex Space Marine books as I left them out last time. For Black Templars, Halbrek is one of the most dynamic models they've ever sculpted. I adore it. The Blood Angel Psycho Dreadnought with the spear is so iconic and probably would have swayed me to Blood Angels if I ever played Space Marines proper. I literally don't have the heart to check if they've legends that model yet, but I know for a fact none of the new models they got would nearly make up for legendsing the Psycho Dreadnought. I really like Ravenwing. The idea of a full Biker Marine army has always been so cool to me, which is why it's so weird to me that I exclusively see Terminator spam every time I see Dark Angels. I've met so many Dark Angels players, more than any other chapter, and it is always 30 Ivory Terminators. What a shame. Grey Knight's teleporting shtick seems really fun, and I've never understood the baby carrier hate. It's an all-time classic. Oh no, he's in front of the armor, what's even protecting him? Your Warlord isn't wearing a helmet, get over yourself. And finally, every Space Wolf player I've ever played against offered to buy me a drink, even when I was kinda young. Even as someone who will usually pick my favorite character in a video game by looking at the bottom of the tier list, it is really hard to find something about Imperial Agents to like. I don't care that they're bad, it's just such a hollow husk of a book. The Assassin's Detachment is actually a really cool concept, but it's perhaps the worst rules ever put on paper. I guess I like that people still take this army to big tournaments just for the challenge. Kind of like a fun spirit of the competition type thing, I don't know, this book stinks. Sisters of Battle are the reason I wanted to make this follow-up video. I actually want to ease away from this style of video. It's just a bit sludgy for me, you know, a bit too top 10. But I didn't word my critique of Sisters of Battle players very well. I think 99% of Sisters players are totally normal people. The type of player I described in my last video is the absolute minority. Sisters of Battle have one of the most striking visual designs in the franchise. They are so sleek and decadent, one of my favorite model lines in the game. I have a small Sisters army. I love the Sisters of Battle. My absolute favorite thing about the Sisters of Battle is the Immolator. Not the model, although that is spectacular. I mean the unit from Dawn of War Soulstorm. I used to exclusively run Sisters campaigns in that game, and the Immolator was by far my favorite unit in the game. Almost solely because I loved its voice lines, specifically this one.
Behold, the Immolator!
That line brings back so many memories. In my other video, I was really surprised how many AdMech players went against my sentiment of really enjoying the steampunk aspects of AdMech models. Mostly because I'm surprised there was AdMech players in my comments in the first place. Again, it's the only army I've never seen in person. But also because that's my favorite thing about this model line. I do totally see how annoying it must be for AdMech players who don't like that design to see their army get watered down by more and more beige fabrics when you signed up for the robot army. Also, you guys corrected me by pointing out that it's actually closer to a subcategory of steampunk called Da Vinci Punk. Which is really weird, because if you guys hate it so much, why would you give it one of the sickest names I've ever heard of? I also just love the new sniper model. I was so mad when everyone dunked on it. Oh my god guys, he's got skilts, that's so silly. This is genuinely some of the best body horror I've ever seen. I really enjoy playing Elite Army. It stems from getting thrashed by a Grey Knights player as a kid, and I remember being so shocked his handful of guys minced my entire horde of Tyranids that I had just gotten for Christmas. And Custodes are the elite army. Now this might be a little bit of a controversial take, and I'm sure many of you guys have already surmised that Imperial Knights are actually the elite army, as you're playing with way less models. But I actually feel like Custodes are the more elite army, as you're just working with so much less plastic. I want to know if anyone else agrees with me on this one. I've always felt this way, especially as an Imperial Knights player. It goes without saying that being so damn cheap is also the single best thing about this army. I just wish they weren't so reliant on their Forge Rod models to be competitive. Also, not to be the pettiest person in the world, but I did start doing my Bug Studies army again because one person commented that it was ugly. Now this entry is a potato in the world of low-hanging fruit, as I'm just going to say that I love the Imperial Guard's range of artillery options. I normally don't like modern military aesthetics, and yes, this is contemporary military when this is the scale that we're working with in Warhammer. But massive guns aimed to the sky will never not be awesome. Maybe the most common complaint I got in my last video that it was just lacking nuance and depth. Too many anecdotes and not enough data, but I don't know, that's just not who I am. I feel like there's already enough videos out there that go over the armies in a more critical way. I just want to have some casual, silly fun, and I can't think of anything more silly and casual than running nothing but ultra overcosted artillery pieces. Also, Ratlings. The new Ratling kill team fucks. Space Marines have the single biggest boon in the game, and that's that Space Marine players fund the entire game. There's no Kroot hunting pack box if there wasn't a million Space Marine players buying the same identical power armor blokes. There'd be no Genestealer cult anything if it wasn't for Space Marine players buying 6 armies just to run the most optimal gun line they can. Space Marine players are the lifeblood of our entire game, and no matter how much you dislike the default army, you need to give them a good NHS wave each time they fund an entire edition with a new starter box, just so your army can get a character they already had, but this time with a jetpack. Even though it's a little lame to go to an event and play against Space Marines 80% of the time, it is always fun to get to ask your opponent why they chose their chapter. You'll get so many different responses. My personal favorite loyalist chapter is Salamanders, but my favorite to play against is always Iron Hands. Iron Hands players fucking love their chapters so much, and they'll be so happy to go over all their vehicles and tell you their names. Imperial Fist players will spend their entire hobby lifetime perfecting the hardest color in the game, just for a piss yellow army, which is a level of dedication you just have to respect. I'm very thankful for Space Marine players, although I wish you guys spent enough to save Harlequins. Imperial Knights, my first love. The best thing about Imperial Knights is that every model is a centerpiece. The pure craftsmanship that goes into every single one of these models is outstanding. But I actually want to spend more time focusing on maybe the most underrated thing about this army. 90% of Imperial Knights players pick Knights for the same thing. I want to play big stompy robots. And I'd imagine that a lot of players were exactly like me and wanting to max out on mega robots. My first lists all revolved around the Valiant, by far the coolest knight. And I think I ran with 4 Questoris Knights as well, by cutting costs on all the extra weapons. And what you'll learn very quickly is that Knights really need armigers. They're not as cool as the big Knights, but I do want to start winning, so I'll buy a box of Warglaves. But after spending time with them, you'll realize that these guys are really pulling their weight and you'll kind of want some more. And you know what? I can't believe I'm saying this after all this time and as Valiant's biggest fan and overall Big Knight lover. I think the armigers are my favorite part of the army now. They're still really big models, they're just so much more fun to play with, and they're worth twice their weights in points. I've been kitting out my Warglaives with these drill arms that my friend personally designed for me, and these days I'm looking for ways to cut points to fit more armigers into my list. In fact, here's the ultimate testimony for how solid armigers are. A couple years back, I went home to my family's for a summer after being away for a couple years for uni, and I'd forgot my family's house etiquette. I left my Imperial Knights on the table after touching up their paint for a bit, and overnight, while I was dreaming of Titanic sheep, the family's shitbag chihuahuas had parkoured onto the table, and had managed to knock half of my army onto the floor, where they were completely chewed apart by 3 chihuahuas, a British bulldog, and a tortoise named Lucas, whose biting strength is way more vicious than you'd guess. In total, they laid waste to 2 Helverins and 3 Questoris Knight, about half of my total army. Since that fateful day, I only ever bought 1 more Questoris Knight, and I'd never even used it, I've not finished building it yet, but I did buy about 8 armigers since then. I just think they're more fun to use. They also provide a nice bit of contrast, making the big knights look even bigger. And that was my favourite thing about every single army in the game. There honestly isn't an army I dislike, so this was a very easy video to make. Even the most frustrating armies in the game to play against, Tau, have qualities that more than redeem them in my books. Crew. Make sure you check out my Road to London playlist as I update it. It's my journey from complete 40k noob to hopefully competitive pro. I have so much content planned for it, I'm so fucking content pilled. Thank you very much for watching, cheers.